Alright, the Reds, it's Talking Reds. Tuesday's Talking Reds. Gareth Roberts, Josh Sexton from a dull and dreary Liverpool. There's no big transfer news today around Liverpool. It does seem like Chelsea are signing half a football team, but they are only half a football team compared to the boys in red. So what I wanted to talk about today, Josh, is just the Reds really and where we're at, but also where we're at in terms of a club behind the scenes and stuff like that. The reason being is I spotted something in the Sunday Times that I thought was interesting. It was a bigger piece about sort of recruitment, about the new season and stuff like that. But there was just a little mention in there of something, and I just thought, Liverpool are clever, aren't they? Like, it constantly comes across to me that they're clever. Oh, hello. Excuse me. It's Neil Atkinson. Not just now, Neil. Anyways, yeah, so it comes across to me that they're clever and they're constantly like looking at different ways they can get a competitive edge. You've had the throwing coach, you've had various bits of, the nutritionists coming in. They seem to lead the way on that. You've got people like behind the scenes, like mathematicians and all kinds of madness, which is really, really interesting. But something mentioned here called Skill Corner. And apparently they worked exclusively with Liverpool last season. And they've got this unique performance tool that allows you to watch HD videos of games, and you can measure how far players are running and their physical output, because, surprise, surprise, it says that clubs don't normally share that information with each other. And I just thought it was interesting. Like I say, it's just another way that Liverpool are sort of looking for an edge. And when you look at the season that's coming up and the schedule of it, so we've got Salzburg tonight, obviously, Charity Shield on Saturday against Arsenal. Then they go away and play internationals, and they've got this Nation League bollocks, that shite that everyone hates. Then they come back from that and it's Leeds in the Premier League. And then once it gets going, once you're into like October and all the European football start, it's basically a game every 3 days. And so I started thinking, well, obviously the sides that are physically better and physically at their peak more often, you would think are going to triumph. And it just seems to me, even in terms of recruitment, you look at our stats and like there's so many players last 2 seasons that have played virtually every game. And I think some people are saying, well, that's a negative because they play too much football. But I'm like, no, it's a positive because they're resilient and they don't get injured much. And whatever they're doing behind the scenes at Liverpool, they're doing it right.
Yeah, it feels like as a club we're just getting sort of everything right at the moment. And I think, to be fair, I think that's been the case for a while. We feel at the moment like the model club to follow, and it's interesting that you mentioned Chelsea at the start and their sort of recruitment policy, and you look at United and even maybe Arsenal, although I think they're sort of coming somewhere towards a better keel with Arteta and things like that. And the reason that they're going out and just scattergun approach signing a load of players is because they have to do that, and ultimately Liverpool don't have to. And obviously we give Jurgen Klopp loads of credit because he's the best manager in world football, but he's also allowed to be that because of the system that's in place for him. And he's constantly talking about his backroom staff, and when he gets these Manager of the Year awards, even his Manager of the Month awards, he wants to make sure that he's stood on the training ground with all the staff, and that's not just Pep Linders and Peter Kravitz and whoever. It goes right down to the analysts and stuff who will be stood there with him, and that's because Liverpool as a club of innovators so much, and it's due to the marginal gains really. To be honest, it's probably due to City and the way that they were as a club for so long, when they were winning all the league titles and just looking like they were going to dominate English football. I think Liverpool took a bit of a leaf out of City's book and almost went one better and tried to get those marginal gains. And you mentioned the throwing coach. The bloke who came in to do the psychology thing I think he was the surfer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And all those sorts of things all just sort of feed into this big like one club mentality we have now. And I think you wrote about it a few weeks ago for our website as well, where it just feels like everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet, and it's not always been the case with Liverpool at all. In fact, there's been times where it's been sort of far from that, and you don't trust people who are in charge of recruitment and stuff at the club. Whereas now, I'm sort of so like zen and just sanguine about it all, because I just believe in like each transfer that happens. And you see this Tsimikas lad coming in now. I can't say I watched Olympiacos much last season. I think I actually watched them once against Wolves, and that was the game which happened a few weeks ago. So I'm just at a point now where I just trust the direction that the club's going in, and that's because of Klopp, but it's because of all the staff he's got around him as well. And even to an extent, I know people don't like to hear it, it's because of FSG. It's because they've been the ones who've sort of put their money where their mouth is to an extent to go and get all these right people in place, because ultimately they're baseball at best. They don't know much about football. They never did know much about football. I know they gave it the spiel when they came in that Tom Werner was this massive Liverpool fan and had this big project, and LeBron James a Liverpool fan and whatever, but they were just baseball, moneyball people at the end of the day. But they've come in and made sure that the right staff are in place, and that's why we're sort of almost the perfect football club at the moment.
Yeah, and it seems like they're all sort of open to new ideas as well, which I think is a good thing. I mean, we were doing Pro View with Steve Warnock the other day, and he was talking about how he wished he'd embraced working with a psychologist earlier on in his career, because he noticed that he got great gains from working with one, and obviously Liverpool have got them on board, as you said there. Yeah, I mean, I tried to find some facts and figures about, like, some old school Reds, if you like, have said to me, like, you know, oh, I don't get this obsession with, like, running. Like, why do you see running stats when you're watching the footy sometimes? And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, it's not the game that it once was. And so it kind of, I get what you're saying, it shouldn't just be an athletic thing. But equally, if a player is running loads, it's normally because they're closing down loads. It makes you really hard to play through you. I think you saw that to an extent the other night with Bayern Munich against PSG. You know, and people are still discussing now, you know, about the high line they play, and that it was dead risky, and that PSG could have broke through, and in fact they didn't have chances and things like that. But equally though, the fact that the intensity they played with, the tactical foul and all that kind of stuff, people might not like that, but it's hugely part of the game. So I tried to find some stats, because, you know, it does mention in the Sunday Times piece that it's almost like a secret, if you like. And it is hard to try and find them. So I found something from May, which was talking about the players that had covered the most distance in the Premier League. And there's a couple of Liverpool players who are mentioned. There's only a handful of players who've ever run more than 13 kilometres in a game this season, and James Milner's one of them, which is mad, but equally no surprise. In terms of the best one out of Liverpool players, it's Firmino. He's the one who's clocked up the most over the season. But that, again, he's another one where he plays almost every game, and he's clocking up the most distance. And you know, you just think, like, there's so many players that are on board with this system. I remember reading the book about when Klopp was at Dortmund, and how, you know, after a while they fully embraced the system. They knew where they were at, they knew what everyone was doing, and I feel like that's where we are now. You know, that's why, you know, like you, I'd love us to sign Thiago, don't get me wrong, and I'd love us to sign a centre half, and, you know, even someone else up front. You know, I'd rather see someone else coming off the bench than Origi, for example. But equally, I'm just all right. I trust them. I trust what they're doing. I think everyone's in a good place. And we haven't lost anyone key. You know, we've lost Lovren, we've lost Lallana, but, you know, the core of the group that's won us the league and won us the European Cup and won us the World Club Cup is still there.
Yeah, I think the reason that we probably as Liverpool fans are obsessed with that sort of, you know, the running stats and the distance covered is because that was sort of, it was almost the dream that we were sold when Klopp came in, wasn't it? And you think back to that first game against Tottenham where, you know, it's like the iconic image now of Lallana falling into his arms when he gets subbed off and stuff. And that game, I'm pretty sure there were stats kicking around from that game. I obviously don't know them off the top of my head because it was years ago now, but about how much more Liverpool ran in that game compared to the game before, which I think would have been Everton away, wouldn't it, Rodgers' last game? And that sort of, you know, that was the whole, when Klopp came in, it was going to be heavy metal, it was going to be gegenpressing, and that's probably the one thing that he's sort of retained from that heavy metal football style, because I don't think we're really a heavy metal football team anymore. I don't think it's all gung-ho and hell for leather. There's an argument that it never really was, but you look at games like, you know, Norwich away that season where it ends up 5-4, does it, something, and it used to be that sort of Liverpool was so good going forward. It actually reminds me a bit of Manchester United now, to be honest, the way that they're so good going forward. They've got all that forward talent. They've got lads like Mason Greenwood coming through and stuff, but then at the back they're still absolutely all over the gaff, and that was the way that we were for so long, and then it felt like Klopp actually started to build us from the back, and maybe that was a sort of change of style from him in terms of the teams he's had in the past. I know that, you know, Dortmund weren't necessarily bad at defending. They had obviously Hummels and Subotic and players like that, but it didn't seem like Dortmund were the sort of side who'd win loads of games 1-0, and that's where I feel like, and I know Neil likes to make the comparison, we've almost developed into this Fergie United side now where, look, we can still blow a team away like we did to Crystal Palace just after the restart, and if a team lets us sort of, you know, get the foot on the neck and get that grip hold in a game, then we will. But for the most part, this Liverpool side will just win games and just keep doing that, and that's why, you know, we're so relentless now in terms of winning trophies and winning points.
Yeah, Salzburg tonight, or this afternoon rather, and the Anfield app will be, as ever, covering that in all the usual ways, and then the same with the Charity Shield at the weekend. And on the Charity Shield and on the schedule generally, it is mad, obviously, with the coronavirus situation, the fact that we sort of lost a month of the season, if you like, and everything's got to be crammed in. Klopp's talked today about the Community Shield basically being a bit tricky. He says we'll have to give some players a few more minutes so we can get closer to the 90. But I've said before, we cannot do less now because we play the game on Saturday. We have to prepare for a full season. After Arsenal, a lot of our players go to the international games, so they'll have to play for their countries. So they now need proper training. The weekend will be tricky, but we will be as ready as possible. That kind of sounds like he's sort of prepping the way to say, listen, it's just the Charity Shield. That's kind of where I am with it, to be honest. It's a nice thing to win. You know, you want to win any game that Liverpool plays in, but it's all about the Leeds game, and it's all about, you know, attacking the next title, as Klopp talked about.
Yeah, I think it's always been sort of classified as like a glorified friendly, hasn't it? And I think, to be honest, this will be the most pre-season friendly it's maybe ever been. I think there's been times where, particularly when Liverpool have been in it, to be honest, you've watched the Charity Shield and there is a competitive edge to it. I think back to, you know, City last year, and I almost went into that thinking, look, if City win, it's one of them. It's a day out at Wembley in August, and that's the way that I was sort of going to take it. But then I think when we equalised late in the game, I'm bang up for it at that point, and I might be that way on Saturday, but it feels like Klopp and I think Arteta will be the same as well, because they're both smart managers. They both care about the players as well ultimately, and they'll want the players to come out of that and retain fitness. They're not going to, you know, push their players through the ringer to try and win some shield, because that's the way they see it. Look, it's not counted in the major honours that you have at the end of the season. I know City want to put it in front of their team when they talk about calling themselves the Formidables or whatever, as though it counts as one of those sort of end of season honours, but it doesn't, and that's the way these managers are going to see it, and they're going to see it as another step towards getting fit for the new season. They're going to see it as a chance to maybe test out a few things. I expect to see lads like Curtis Jones maybe getting a bit of game time and stuff like that. I know he obviously featured heavily the other day in terms of the general play. I don't know, obviously everyone only played 45 minutes, but I expect to see lads like him getting a run out, and maybe, to be honest, they'll be doing that same sort of minutes pattern where it's one team for the first half, and then you know, not the sort of wholesale changes you would see in the pre-season friendly, but, you know, as many as he can make for the second half of it. Yeah,
I don't know what the score is with the kits. I don't know if they wear the swimming pool one against Arsenal, but we shall see.
I'm bang into it, you know. I know people don't like to obsess over kits anyway, but I'm actually into
my
that
son
kit,
likes it, like, you know, because I think that's what's interesting for me. Like, I saw it and I just said the same old things about, you know, how it should be traditional colours and all that kind of stuff. But, like, you know, my son, who it's probably marketed that more than it is me, because he's more likely to wear it than I am, he's banging into it. He really likes it, and he, you know, like, and he's like, they're all different, you know, Dad. And I'm like, what? They're all different? Well, how can they be different? It's meant to be a kit. And he's like, yeah, but they're all slightly different because it's just the bottom of a swimming pool, innit? And I was like, okay. Okay. But yeah, the schedule is mad. I just wanted to mention that, you know, there's only 4 spare midweeks due to the Champions League final on May the 29th. So I think there's going to be lots of fingers crossed among football administrators. We obviously saw the ridiculous situation last season with the World Club Cup final. Something like that could well easily happen again if one side gets to sort of Carabao Cup final, deep into the FA Cup, deep into Europe and all that. And obviously Liverpool are capable of that, City are capable of that, maybe Chelsea, maybe Man United, we shall see. So yeah, it's going to be a mad one, and not least, of course, there is the possibility of a second wave of the coronavirus as well. So, you know, fingers crossed that doesn't happen, of course. But yeah, a couple of things to plug before we go. There's stuff in the shop for you to go and have a look at the AnfieldWrap.com/shop. Is that right?
Or shop.theanfieldwrap.com. Both of them.
There you go. They both work. What have we got, Josh?
You've got one of the adult ones there, so this is from our Premier League Champions range. I've got one of the youth ones, obviously, because as the comments will know, I'm a very youthful man. We've got the mugs here as well, just won it. That's part of our range, as Robbo's got there. And then I've got the one which matches Robbo's mug there as well. So get on all of that.
Yeah, loads of stuff on there. Go and have a look. Get yourself dressed up. Announce to the world that Liverpool are the champions. Worth remembering that whatever happens with this coming season, we get to go all the way through it, singing that we're champions, telling the world that we won the league, telling the world that we've won it 19 times, and fingers crossed that we're back in the stadium soon, because that's what we're all looking forward to, isn't it? But whatever happens, as I say, the Anfield app will be there doing it. Video, podcast, stuff on the website, theanfieldwrap.com. That's been Talking Reds. Up to Reds.